A millionaire CEO rushing through a subway tunnel. A little girl, barefoot, playing a broken piano with the grace of a prodigy, and a melody that made him stop cold for the first time in years. But what if the music wasn't the only thing that sounded familiar? What if her eyes looked a little too much like someone he once knew? And what if the truth about her mother, her music, and the blood running in her veins was something no amount of money could erase? Nathaniel Cross built an empire on silence, strategy, and control. He never planned for his past to echo through the hands of a child. He didn't even know he had a daughter. Until that day. What happens when power meets innocence? When buried love resurfaces in a subway melody, and when a child unknowingly plays the song that could restore or destroy everything. Stay with us for a story of secrets, second chances, and the music that reconnects what was once broken. If you've ever believed in the quiet strength of love or the healing power of truth, like, share, and subscribe to join us as we begin this unforgettable journey. It was one of those gray, halcyon afternoons, the kind that blurred 1 hour into the next. Businessmen drifted through Union Terminal like ghosts in tailored wool, faces buried in their phones, their footsteps syncing with the hum of the station. The air smelled faintly of roasted peanuts and train brake dust. Nathaniel Cross stood beneath the vaulted arches of the main concourse, checking the time on his watch without truly seeing it. 4:46 p.m.? He had 13 minutes until his town car circled to the corner of 3rd and Havermore. He had a flight to prepare for, a quarterly review to rehearse, and a board meeting agenda to finalize by nightfall. He also had a slight headache. Not from the numbers. He liked numbers. Numbers were honest, contained, obedient. They didn't wake you in the middle of the night. People did. Nathaniel exhaled slowly, adjusting the cuffs of his charcoal gray coat. A woman bumped into him, muttered an apology, and disappeared into the crowd. Another day, another blur, and then it stopped. Not time, not people, but something inside him froze, tilted, because floating through the buzz of the station came a sound that didn't belong there. A piano, raw, aching, clear. The notes cut through the station's rhythm like a bird call in the middle of a thunderstorm. Nathaniel turned, instinctively. The melody minor key, deliberate pace, and haunting in its softness wrapped around his chest like a memory he hadn't meant to keep. He took a step, then another, past the newspaper stand, down a side platform corridor he didn't remember choosing. There, tucked beneath the faded blue exit sign and surrounded by a ring of loose change and folded bills, was a girl, 8, maybe 9, knees tucked beneath her, elbows lifted with trained ease. Her small hands danced across a portable keyboard that looked older than she was. The instrument wobbled slightly on an overturned milk crate, but her playing, it was precise, felt, earnest. Nathaniel froze. The melody was familiar, not popular, not commercial. It was the kind of piece written by someone who never intended for anyone to hear it. A melody born out of solitude, regret. He had played it once, only once. Back then, it had no name, just a key signature, a tempo marking moderato con dolor moderate, with sorrow. Now here it was, alive, in a subway station, played by a child. Nathaniel stepped back, disoriented. The girl kept playing, unaware of the stares or the subtle hush settling around her. A couple paused with their coffee. A conductor lingered by the stairwell. Something in the music had drawn them all here, and Nathaniel couldn't pull away. When she finished, silence filled the space for a full 2 seconds before a few hands clapped awkwardly. Then more joined. The girl gave a shy nod, her eyes flicking upward with a strange mix of pride and uncertainty. Nathaniel approached slowly, pulling out his wallet. He wasn't in the habit of giving money on impulse. Not anymore. But this wasn't charity. It felt like a transaction with fate. He placed a crisp $100 bill in the glass jar beside her keyboard. "Thank you," the girl said, her voice as even and controlled as her fingers had been. Her eyes met his grayish blue, almost icy in the fluorescence. Nathaniel swallowed. "You play beautifully," he managed, his voice rougher than intended. "My mom taught me," she said proudly. "She used to play professionally. She went to Juilliard. Of course she did." "What's your name?" he asked. "Eliza," she said. "Eliza Wren." The name twisted something inside him. Wren. He'd heard that name once, long ago. But it wasn't just the name. It was her eyes. They were his, and that melody his. Nathaniel stepped back, mind racing. The timeline, the math, the possibility he didn't dare complete. Instead, he nodded. "Well, Eliza," he said gently, "you're very talented. How long have you been playing here? Since last summer?" She said, "Only on Thursdays. My mom's sick, so we're saving up." "Sick," he repeated, his chest tightening. "Chemo. It makes her tired." Eliza adjusted the position of her small bench, preparing for another song. "We don't talk about stage 3. She says we only focus on the fight." Nathaniel's throat closed. He wanted to say something, offer more, ask questions, but all the words that came to mind felt wrong, invasive, or worse, too late. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Maya, his assistant, reminding him of the call with Tokyo in 20 minutes. The real world pulling him back by the collar. "I have to go," he said quietly. "But keep playing." She nodded, already turning back to the keys. As he walked away, the music rose behind him again. But this time, it followed him. Not like background noise, but like something alive, something unfinished. By the time he stepped into a car and shut the door, Nathaniel Cross knew that something in his life, something big, had just cracked open. He didn't know her story, not all of it, but he had a feeling she might be part of his. The next morning arrived like most did for Nathaniel Cross. Early, mechanical, quiet. He stood at his kitchen window, a sleek pane of glass that framed the halcyon skyline like a painting. The sky was already streaked with silver light, the kind that never quite looked warm. The coffee in his cup had long gone cold, forgotten as he stared through the reflection of himself and into the memory of the girl in the subway. Eliza. That was her name. He said it aloud to no one, just to hear how it felt in the air, like a note played on an old violin, trembling and unresolved. Nathaniel had not returned to Union Terminal out of routine. He didn't believe in fate. Not really. But that melody, those eyes, that name, something in him couldn't let it go. He hadn't slept well. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the piece she played, not just the notes, but the way she had played them, as if she knew the story behind them, even though he had never told a soul. Not even his assistant Maya knew that he had once composed music. Not a hobby, not for charity fundraisers, real compositions. Once upon a time, back when life had been quieter, softer, back when Juliet Wren had been in it. He hadn't seen Juliet in almost 10 years. They had met at a summer institute in New York. He had been 29, already working under his father's pressure at Cross Point, but desperate for a few weeks of something different, something beautiful. She was 28, a Juilliard graduate with a fire in her playing and light in her laughter. He remembered how she played with her eyes closed, and how he used to write melodies just to hear her fingers bring them to life. And then he left. Not because he wanted to, because his father had called. And when Richard Cross called, you answered? That was the rule. A family empire could not run on emotion. He used to say, only discipline, only control. He never saw Juliet again, never heard from her, until yesterday. Not directly, of course, but what else could that girl be? Her face, her hands, her name, her music. It wasn't a maybe, it was a knowing, deep and terrifying and undeniable. Maya entered his office without knocking, like always. Her hands were full, but her expression said she'd already read his mood. You're staring at the piano again, she said gently, setting a file on his desk. I didn't sleep. I gathered that. She sat. I also rescheduled your afternoon briefings. I figured you'd want to clear time for whatever this is. Nathaniel looked at her then. Really looked. Maya had been with him for 6 years. Loyal, brilliant, unshakably grounded. She knew how to navigate boardrooms and silence both at once. But even she had never heard about Juliet. Do you remember when I was in New York for that Juilliard project, he asked suddenly? Maya raised an eyebrow. Summer of 2014. Some charitable initiative, if I remember correctly. Not exactly. He hesitated. I met someone there, a pianist, Juliet Wren. She waited. No interruptions, just quiet permission. We spent the summer writing music, nothing professional, just the kind of thing you do when you forget the rest of the world exists. And then my father found out, cut it short, told me she wasn't strategic material. I never saw her again. Maya tilted her head, reading between the words. Yesterday, in Union Terminal, a little girl played a piece I wrote for Juliet, one that no one else has ever seen, and she has my eyes. Her name is Eliza Wren. That's not a coincidence. No, it's not. What are you going to do? That was the question, and it sat in the air like a held breath. I don't know, he admitted. She was playing for donations. Said her mother was sick. Cancer. She said Juliet taught her piano. Maya's expression softened. Then maybe what you do next isn't about the past. Nathaniel. Maybe it's about the present, about the kid. Not what she proves, but who she is. He nodded slowly. Will you? Find out what you can discreetly already started, Maya said with a small smile. I figured this wasn't the end of it. At 4:15 p.m. Nathaniel stood once again in Union Terminal. He wore a navy wool coat instead of his usual dark gray. More neutral, less severe. It made him feel slightly less like a corporate executive and slightly more like a man trying to be honest with himself. The station bustled around him. He checked the old marble clock in the center of the main concourse. Eliza had started playing around this time yesterday. He waited. And then, at 4:27, he heard it again. Not the same piece. This one was brighter. A Chopin nocturne, if memory served. The notes flowed with effortless skill. Not perfect, but expressive, personal. He turned the corner and saw her. Same bench, same keyboard, same calm expression as her hands moved in steady rhythm. She didn't see him until the final note faded. You came back, she said simply. I did. Did you like that one? Very much. Chopin. Right. She beamed. Nocturne in E-flat major. You play used to. A long time ago. Why'd you stop? The question caught him off guard. It felt sharp and soft all at once. Life, I guess. He answered. Or maybe I forgot how to listen. She seemed to think about that, then nodded solemnly. My mom says grown-ups forget lots of important things. She's probably right. They sat in silence for a moment. Nathaniel glanced at her tip jar. Less than yesterday. Fewer people had stopped. How's your mother doing? He asked. Some days are good. Today she stayed home. Chemo makes her sick sometimes. She sleeps a lot. Eliza didn't look away when she said it, just said it plain and clean, like she'd had to say it too many times already. Nathaniel felt something crack behind his ribs. I'm sorry, he said. She shrugged. We do what we can. Music helps. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small velvet pouch. I brought you something, if that's okay. She blinked, surprised, but nodded. Inside the pouch was a metronome. Classic wood finish. The kind you didn't see much anymore. Not fancy, but real. It was mine, he said. When I was your age, I thought you might like it. Eliza held it delicately, as if it were a living thing. It's beautiful, she whispered. Her eyes met his again. For a moment, it was like staring into a mirror turned back in time. Thank you. You're welcome. He stood to go. Maya had sent him a message earlier. Something about a name and a date that matched. But he didn't open it yet. He wasn't ready. As he walked away, Eliza called out, Will you come back again? He paused. Yes. He didn't say maybe. He didn't say we'll see. He said yes. And this time, he meant it. Nathaniel Cross rarely allowed himself to revisit the past. Nostalgia, he believed, was a luxury for people who had the time to drown in it. In his world, the only direction that mattered was forward. Stocks moved forward. Progress surged forward. Companies expanded forward. But that night, after seeing Eliza again, forward was a direction that felt suddenly disjointed, blurred by notes from a life he had buried. He sat alone in his penthouse study, lights dimmed low, one hand resting on a tumbler of bourbon he had yet to drink. On the piano in the corner sat a leather notebook, untouched for nearly a decade. Its pages held scribbled scores, fragments of melodies, unfinished arrangements, and one composition that had been completed and then locked away without a name, until Eliza had played it. He opened the notebook and flipped carefully to the back. The music was still there, untitled, in his handwriting. A short phrase written in pencil in the margin for J. When the silence ends. Juliet Wren. That summer in New York had always felt like something separate from the rest of his life. It had been before his father's final stroke, before the board seat, before the international expansions, and before the weight of legacy had fully settled on his shoulders. He was 29 and disillusioned. The company was already large, his calendar full, his mind sharpened by pressure, but his heart had felt hollow. He had attended the Juilliard summer program under the guise of philanthropy, a Cross-Point Foundation initiative that supported classical music. But in truth, he had needed to disappear for a while. He signed up anonymously. No press, no assistant, just a man with a piano and a name no one questioned. Juliet had been magnetic from the moment he heard her play. She wasn't the most technically perfect pianist in the program, but she was the most alive. Her playing was fearless, raw in its honesty. She smiled with her entire face, laughed at her own wrong notes, and somehow made sadness sound like an invitation rather than a punishment. She had called him Nate. No one else did. They had spent hours in practice rooms, composing together, improvising, scribbling themes on napkins at the campus cafe. For once, Nathaniel had felt like a person instead of a projection. With Juliet, he hadn't needed to earn anything. He only needed to be. They had made plans, nothing big, just small, real things. A fall concert, a duet album, maybe a trip to Paris where she had once played in a street market with a borrowed accordion. She had stories like that. Ridiculous, warm, impossible stories that somehow always felt true. And then the call came. His father's voice had been clipped, unreadable. Return now. You've made your point. We have a problem in Zurich and a press inquiry in London. Juliet had still been asleep when he left. He'd written her one letter on the plane, never sent it. He told himself she'd understand. He told himself she'd call. She didn't. When he returned to New York 2 months later, she was gone. Moved out of her apartment. No forwarding address. No trace in any program or concert listing. It was as if she had evaporated from the world. Nathaniel had buried the summer like he had buried the music. It belonged to another version of him. A man who hadn't yet learned that even temporary happiness left permanent marks. He leaned back in the chair, the notebook open in front of him. Then he pulled out his phone. Maya had texted him earlier that day. It was still unread. He opened it now. Eliza Wren, age 9, born May 21st, 2015. Mother Juliet. Elaine Wren. No father listed on record. Address Prospect Street, East Halcyon. School Halcyon Elementary. 4th grade. Juliet's employment listed as part-time piano tutor. Health insurance minimal coverage. Current treatment facility. Halcyon General Oncology Wing. Status active chemotherapy. Financial aid insufficient. Nathaniel exhaled sharply. 9 years. He counted backward. Summer 2014. The math was painfully precise. He had a daughter. She was his. He set the phone down and closed the notebook. The room felt colder than before. Not because of the weather, but because of what it meant. He had missed everything. Her first words, her first steps, her first recital. All of it. And Juliet. She had done it alone. Not just the parenting, but the sickness, the exhaustion, the fear. She had faced it without ever reaching out. Had she tried? Had someone stopped her? A memory clawed its way to the surface. His father's office. Months after that summer. A folder sitting on the desk. Sealed, but opened slightly when Nathaniel walked in. He had only seen one name before his father slid it into a drawer. Wren. He had said nothing, and his father had made sure he never would. Nathaniel stood up and walked to the piano, slowly lifting the lid. The keys were smooth, colder than he remembered. He hadn't played since the week his father died. He pressed one note, then another, then the first 3 bars of the piece Eliza had played. His fingers remembered it. His eyes closed. He imagined Juliet playing beside him, her elbow nudging his as she adjusted a chord, her head tilted slightly as she listened. He could still hear her voice in his memory. "It's okay if you don't finish everything. Nate, some music writes itself when it's ready." She had said that once. Maybe about the song. Maybe about life. He looked out the window. The city lights glittered like the stars that used to hang above Juliet's bed in her old apartment. She said they helped her remember that no matter what happened, the sky was always bigger than her problems. He whispered her name into the stillness. Juliet. He would see her, not just from afar. He needed to ask, to listen, to explain, tomorrow. But first, Eliza. He needed to know her favorite color, her favorite song, what made her laugh, what made her scared. He had to earn her before he could claim her. That night, Nathaniel didn't sleep again. But for the first time in years, he didn't mind the insomnia. He sat at the piano until sunrise, writing, not an apology, not a masterpiece, just a lullaby for a girl who had already lived through too much silence. Union Terminal on a Friday afternoon had its own kind of rhythm. Announcements echoed against the old tile. Footsteps clipped briskly across the marble floor. Strangers passed without seeing each other, lives brushing for seconds, then parting again. But Nathaniel Cross didn't feel like a stranger anymore. Not in that place, not in that moment. He waited at the edge of the corridor where Eliza usually played. The bench was already in place. Her old keyboard rested atop the milk crate, its corners frayed and the power cord patched with electrical tape. She wasn't there yet. That gave him time to think. Not that it helped much. He hadn't told Maya he was coming. He hadn't scheduled anything with Juliet either. It felt strange he planned mergers down to the hour, dictated global logistics like clockwork. But this, meeting his daughter for the third time without revealing who he truly was, required a kind of patience he wasn't used to. The crowd shifted, and there she was. Eliza Wren moved through the station like she belonged to it. A backpack too large for her frame was slung over one shoulder. Her coat looked a little big, likely a hand-me-down or something donated. Her hair was tied in a quick ponytail that bounced as she walked. In her free hand, she carried sheet music rolled into a cylinder, rubber-banded at both ends. She sat down without drama, without prelude. When she noticed him, her lips curled into a smile. Not a wide one, but real. "You came back," she said simply. "I said I would. You brought coffee." She nodded toward the cup in his hand. He offered it to her. Hot chocolate with cinnamon. A guess. Lucky one. She took a sip and gave a quiet nod of approval. Nathaniel sat down on the stone bench nearby. Not too close. Just enough to see her play. "Do you always come alone?" "Only on days Mom's too tired." "Sasha usually picks me up after I'm done." "Who's Sasha Mom's friend?" "She's a social worker. She brings me snacks and makes sure I don't talk to weird people." Nathaniel smiled despite himself. "Am I a weird person?" "Not yet, but I'm watching." He laughed softly. Her timing was perfect. She could read people like she read notes. With precision. Eliza unrolled her music and set it on a dented stand she balanced between her knees. Before she began playing, she asked without looking at him, "Why do you come here?" The question wasn't an attack, just curiosity, the kind that didn't flinch. "I heard something I wasn't expecting," he said slowly, "and I wasn't ready to let it go. That something was me. It was what you played. But yes, you too." She considered that, then nodded, accepting the honesty. She started with something different, a jazz progression. Her fingers moved with casual confidence. She wasn't just classically trained. She had range, and she listened to what she played. That was rare. Nathaniel had known full-grown adults who never learned that part. When she paused between pieces, he asked carefully, "What's your favorite thing about playing?" She answered without hesitation. "When the notes match how I feel, when they say it better than words do." "That's a good answer. Mom says I think too much for my age. I think you think just enough." She gave him a sideways glance, suspicious of the compliment. He decided to push gently. "What's your mom like? Beautiful?" Eliza said. "Smart? Brave? She doesn't get scared even when she probably should?" Nathaniel tried to keep his voice steady. "And what does she say about your dad? That he played piano once?" that he loved music more than anything. But life made him forget for a while. Did she ever tell you his name? No. I asked once. She said he was a better song than a story. Nathaniel swallowed hard. Juliet had always known how to wrap pain in poetry, but hearing that filtered through Eliza's voice was like being cut gently. Eliza turned toward him, her hands idle on the keys. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why do you come alone?" "You always look like you're leaving something behind." That startled him. Not because it was rude, because it was true. "I guess I've been good at leaving things," he said, "but not so good at going back to find them." "Did you lose someone?" "Yes." "Family, yes." "Maybe you should write a song for them." "That's what Mom says." "If it hurts, make it sing." Nathaniel blinked back something that tried to rise in his throat. She was 9 years old, and somehow wiser than most adults he knew. "Would you help me write it?" he asked. Eliza grinned. "Only if I get co-author credit. Deal." She returned to playing, this time a slow original composition. He could tell. There were little flourishes that belonged only to her. He listened, truly listened, as if hearing his own reflection and sound. That's when Sasha arrived. She was tall, dark curls pulled back in a twist, eyes sharp with warmth behind thin wire glasses. "You must be Mr. Cross," she said, not unkindly, but with clear boundaries. "Guilty. Eliza's mentioned you, the kind stranger with good cocoa and better ears." "I'm Sasha Emery." They shook hands. Nathaniel kept his voice measured. "I hope I haven't crossed any lines." Sasha studied him a moment. "Juliet's a private person. She keeps her circle small. Eliza's smaller, but you've made it to the edge of it. That's something. May I ask how Juliet's doing? Day by day. Some are harder than others. She didn't tell you about me, did she?" Sasha's expression didn't shift. "No, but she knows Eliza met someone. She knows someone's watching out for her. That part matters. And if I wanted to be more than just a stranger, then you'd have to talk to Juliet. With honesty. No games. No performance. She's had enough of that." "I know. I'm trying." Eliza packed up her keyboard while they spoke, zipping it into its fabric case with practiced hands. She looked at Nathaniel with a touch of hesitation. "Will you be here next Friday?" He nodded. "Yes. And every Friday, if you want." She thought for a moment, then said, "I do. I like the way you listen. I like the way you play." Sasha placed a hand on Eliza's shoulder. "Time to go." "Starlet." They waved as they walked toward the exit, just before disappearing into the crowd. Eliza called over her shoulder, "Hey, don't forget to write that song. You promised." Nathaniel stood in the fading echo of her words. He didn't promise many things in life, but this he would keep. Nathaniel Cross wasn't a man used to waiting. In boardrooms, he dictated the tempo. In acquisitions, he anticipated resistance before it could even rise. Timing was his currency, and he spent it wisely. But in matters of the heart, he was bankrupt. Time had passed without him noticing the cost. And now, every minute spent not knowing his daughter or the woman he'd once loved felt like debt compounding. It was Saturday morning, overcast and still, and he stood outside a small brick townhouse on Prospect Street, East Halcyon, Juliet Wren's address. According to Maya's discreet investigation, the home was modest but well-tended. The windows had lace curtains. There were potted succulents on the steps, a pair of pink rain boots tucked neatly to the side, and a small ceramic tile on the doorframe that read, "Music Lives Here." He didn't knock. Not yet. Instead, he stood there, hands in his coat pockets, and watched the front door like it might offer some sign of what waited on the other side. He felt like an intruder, or worse, a coward, a man who had flown across oceans for business, but now couldn't take 5 steps toward the woman who had raised his child alone. He turned away. Not yet. Instead of ringing the bell, he went to the library. Halcyon Public Library sat at the corner of Main and 8th, a quiet building, old but clean, with carved wood beams and soft yellow lights that hummed overhead. He wasn't there for books. He was looking for records, paper trails. The librarian was helpful and more than a little curious when she realized who he was. "Nathaniel Cross?" she asked, peering at him over tortoiseshell glasses. "You don't strike me as someone who reads biographies." "I'm looking for archived local newsletters," he said, "community bulletins, school programs, music recitals, anything with the name Juliet or Eliza Wren in it." She raised an eyebrow but didn't ask further. "Downstairs, 3rd row. We've got 2 decades of Halcyon Heralds in the Union Terminal Gazette. Knock yourself out." The microfilm machine made a soft clicking sound as he scrolled through faded headlines. Juliet Wren's name appeared more than once. She had given lessons at the rec center, played piano for the church choir, volunteered for a winter concert series at the Children's Hospital, but the most recent piece was what stopped him cold. A front-page story, 2 years old. Single mother with stage 2. Diagnosis finds hope through music. The photo showed Juliet holding Eliza in her lap, both smiling, though the strain around Juliet's eyes was evident. The article mentioned Eliza's gift, how she had begun playing by ear at age 4, how Juliet had refused to let cancer define her or her daughter's future. Nathaniel leaned back in the chair, the image blurring slightly. He had sat in hundreds of rooms like this, searching, calculating, reading reports, but none of them had ever felt like this. None had carried the quiet ache of pages that held your child's life, documented by strangers. There was one more thing, an insert in a school bulletin, written in crayon and scanned into print. A 4th grade assignment, My Hero, My Mom, by Eliza Wren. She's my hero because she never gave up. Not when we lost the old keyboard. Not when the medicine made her hair fall out. Not when I messed up at recital. She says music doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be honest. That's how she is, too. Honest. Brave. She hums when she cooks. She holds my hand when I'm scared. She lets me cry, even if she's tired. When I grow up, I want to be like her. But also, I hope I get to meet my dad one day. Mom says he had a soft heart, but a hard life. I think I'd like him. I hope he plays piano, too. Nathaniel closed the file. His hand shook slightly. She hoped to meet him. Present tense, not past, not dismissed, a hope still alive. He stayed at the library until it closed, not because he was still searching, but because he needed to gather the pieces of himself before they shattered across Juliet's doorstep. That night, he returned home and pulled out the old USB drive that held his college recordings. He found a folder labeled Summer 2014. Inside were rough takes of melodies, a duet recorded on a phone, her laughter between takes, and one message he hadn't opened in years, a voicemail. Juliet's voice crackled through the speaker. The message was dated 1 week after he had left New York. "Hey, it's me. I don't even know if this number still works. I thought maybe I'd hear from you. You said you'd call, and then you didn't. And now I feel stupid for believing we could be real. So this is the last message. I won't chase, but if you ever come back, I hope you remember the song we never named. I finished it. Eliza plays it now. Yeah, her name's Eliza. Nathaniel pressed the phone to his chest. She had tried. She had given him a path, and he had missed it. The next morning, he returned to Prospect Street. This time, he knocked. The door opened after a long pause. Juliet stood there, thinner than he remembered, her eyes surrounded by shadows, but her presence still radiant, still unmistakably her. "Nathaniel," she said. No surprise, just quiet recognition. "Juliet," he whispered. She stepped aside. "Come in." The living room smelled faintly of lavender and something baking. A framed photo of Eliza rested on a piano in the corner, next to a vase of wilting sunflowers. He noticed a scarf wrapped around Juliet's head, and the way she moved, delicate, as if conserving energy with every step. "You look tired," he said softly. "I am, but I'm alive." They stood facing each other, a chasm of years between them. "Why didn't you call again?" "I did," she said. "I left one message. After that, I figured silence was your answer. It wasn't. My father, I know. You know he came to see me once, 6 months after you left. Told me never to contact you again. Said you were engaged, building something important, that I'd ruin it." He sat down heavily. "I didn't know. I guessed as much. But by then, Eliza was already here, and I had other things to focus on, like surviving, like being enough. You've been more than enough." She smiled. "Just a little. You saw her play I did. She's remarkable. She's yours too." He met her eyes. "I'd like to be in her life." "Then start with honesty," Juliet said. "Don't just show up with gifts or grand gestures. Show up with time, with listening, with music. I can do that. Good, because she doesn't need a millionaire. She needs a man who knows how to stay." Nathaniel nodded. "So do I." Sunday mornings in East Halcyon had a certain kind of quiet, the kind that didn't ask anything of you. It simply allowed you to exist in it. No board meetings, no financial forecasts, just stillness, and in that stillness. Nathaniel Cross sat on a worn wooden bench in Juliet's backyard, sipping lukewarm tea and listening, not to music this time, but to Juliet's breathing, soft, measured, tired. She sat across from him, legs tucked beneath her, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders. Her skin was paler than he remembered, not lifeless, just fragile. The strength he had once known in her had changed. It had settled deeper, into her eyes, into the way she smiled without wasting energy. Eliza was inside, playing with an old deck of Uno cards. Occasionally, her voice drifted through the screen door, laughing as she challenged the houseplant to a match. Neither of them said much at first. It had been years, and yet something in the silence felt familiar, like a long-rested symphony finding its first downbeat again. "How long have you known," Juliet asked eventually, "that she's mine?" She nodded. "Since the day she played my composition at Union Terminal. But I didn't know it in words. I knew it in her eyes." "She's always been like you," Juliet said. "A quiet edge. Her teachers think she's shy. She's not. She's just selective with her attention." He smiled gently. "That sounds familiar." Juliet paused, watching him. The sunlight slipped across her face, drawing a soft line beneath her cheekbone. Her scarf shifted slightly in the breeze, revealing the faintest patch of new hair growth beneath. "You look tired," he said. "I am. But I'm still showing up." He studied her then, not as a lost lover or someone he failed, but as a woman who had been surviving for years without applause or rescue. How bad is it? Stage 3. We caught it late. It spread. I'm doing the second round of chemo now. Insurance covers the basics, not the specialists, not the experimental options. And Eliza, she knows enough. We don't lie to each other. She's seen me throw up, cry, fall asleep mid-sentence, but she's never seen me give up. That's the deal. Nathaniel clenched his hands quietly in his lap. Every instinct in him wanted to fix it, to fund it, to throw resources at it until the threat disappeared. But he didn't say that. Not yet. Juliet looked at him again. What are you thinking? That I've missed everything? That I don't know where to begin? You begin by sitting here. Like this. That's enough for today. A beat passed. He hesitated, then pulled something from his coat pocket. A folded piece of sheet music. Handwritten. What's that, a lullaby? I wrote it last night. For her. Juliet took it carefully. Her fingers traced the notes with the reverence of someone who still believed music mattered. She didn't speak right away. You always had a way with unresolved chords, she said softly. It's beautiful. It's hers now. If you want it to be, she will. The screen door creaked. Eliza peeked out. Can I show Mr. Nathaniel my music box? Juliet smiled. Sure, sweetie. Bring it here. The little girl appeared seconds later, cradling a wooden box in both hands. It was scratched but lovingly kept. She flipped the latch and opened it. A simple melody played Clair de Lune. The tone was a bit warped, but it still sang. It was my mom's when she was a girl, Eliza said. And now it's mine. One day I'll give it to someone I love too. She sat beside Nathaniel, turning the key again. Do you know Debussy? He does, Juliet said, sipping her tea. He's a composer too. Eliza looked at him, eyes wide. You are, Nathaniel hesitated, then nodded. I used to be. I'm trying to be again. She smiled. Then maybe we can write something together. A duet. That would be an honor. Juliet stood slowly, placing a hand on the doorframe. I need to lie down a bit. Would you two mind staying out here? Of course, Nathaniel said. Standing? She didn't say anything else, just nodded and stepped back inside. Eliza leaned against him a little, just enough for warmth. Do you think she'll get better? I hope so, he said quietly. And I'll do everything I can to help. Promise. He looked at her. Fully. Yes. They sat like that for a while. A man and a girl. A missing link rediscovered. Not through fanfare, but through stillness. Through shared music and unspoken truths. Later that day, Nathaniel stopped by a local bakery and returned with 2 boxes, one of cinnamon rolls, one of savory pastries. Juliet ate one and managed a smile between sips of ginger tea. Eliza gave him a drawing she'd made 3 stick figures, one with a bun, one with a scarf, one with a blue tie, all holding hands under a rainbow of musical notes. It wasn't until he was leaving that Juliet said it. Thank you for not showing up with apologies or money. He paused at the door. I'll show up again. That's what matters now. Good. Because she needs consistency more than grand gestures. So do I. They didn't hug, not yet, but her eyes lingered longer than they had before. Back at his penthouse that night, Nathaniel did something he hadn't done in years. He turned off his phone. He opened his laptop and pulled out a blank manuscript. He wrote until dawn. No press releases, no presentations, just bars and rests. A father composing for the first time as a man who had finally decided to stay. The following Monday. Nathaniel stood inside the executive conference room of Crosspoint Dynamics, staring out the 33rd floor window. Below him, the city pulsed with quiet urgency. But for once, he felt no pressure to engage with it. Not fully. His mind wasn't on shareholder briefings or Q3 strategies. It was on a woman in a shawl and a girl with music in her hands. Maya Brooks entered quietly, holding a sleek gray folder. "You asked me to prepare this," she said. "Full financial breakdown. 2 scenarios. One includes private care at Halcyon Oncology with full coverage for Juliet. The other," she paused, "includes relocation to New York for trial access at Mount Sinai. Both are structured for anonymity. She'll never have to know it came from you if you don't want her to." Nathaniel nodded, not taking the folder just yet. "And the foundation already briefed. They're willing to categorize it under the new Art Lives grant you proposed last year." "Good." He finally took the folder. Maya hesitated a moment. "You care about them?" "I do." She tilted her head slightly, careful but firm. "Then don't lead with money." "I wasn't planning to." Maya gave a small smile. "You used to." He allowed himself a breath. "I'm not the same man." "No," she said. "You're not." Later that evening, he returned to Prospect Street. This time, Juliet met him at the door with a tired smile and a cardigan that hung off her shoulders. "Come in," she said, already walking back toward the living room. Eliza was at the piano, feet swinging beneath the bench, notebook open beside her. She gave Nathaniel a cheerful wave and returned to her scales without breaking rhythm. Juliet sat down carefully. Her hands were thinner than before. There was a weariness in her posture that hadn't been there a week ago. Nathaniel sat beside her. "I brought something," he said. Juliet raised an eyebrow. "Not flowers again, no. Just information." He handed her the folder. She looked at it for a moment, then opened it. Her eyes moved slowly across the pages. Clinical terminology, financial figures, access pathways, donation channels. When she looked back up, she wasn't smiling. "I thought I made it clear I didn't need saving." "This isn't about saving," he said quietly. "It's about support. It's about choice." She placed the folder on the coffee table between them. "Choice is exactly why I'm saying no. Juliet, I mean it. I know what this is. You're trying to buy peace of mind, wrap guilt in charity, but that's not what Eliza needs, and it's not what I want. This isn't guilt, isn't it?" He swallowed hard. "Maybe some of it is, but most of it is love. I didn't know she existed. I didn't know you were sick, but now I do. And doing nothing feels like a crime." Juliet leaned back against the cushions, her breath shallow. "You always moved through the world like you could fix it, like if you had enough leverage, everything would bend. It's not leverage anymore. It's a hand, reaching out. You don't have to take it, but please don't mistake it for control." She looked at him for a long moment. The silence between them didn't feel angry, just tired and sad. "Eliza's the only thing that matters," she said at last. "So if this is truly about her, then you'll respect the way I've raised her. You'll walk beside her. Not above. I will. And if I say no to your money, then I'll still come back. I'll still sit with her on Fridays. I'll still write her songs." Juliet softened. "Then that's enough." They sat for a while, the tension easing. Eliza called from the other room. "Mom, can we show him the attic?" Juliet chuckled. "The attic. She wants to build a practice room. It's mostly boxes and old paint cans." "Let's go see," Nathaniel said, already standing. The attic was narrow and warm, lit by a single skylight. Eliza stood in the center of it with a flashlight and a blueprint drawn in marker on a pizza box lid. "See," she said excitedly. "This part is for the keyboard. Over here. We can hang music posters, and maybe some fairy lights." Juliet leaned against the doorway, smiling despite herself. Nathaniel knelt beside Eliza, examining the plans. "Looks solid. How's your budget?" She grinned. $2 and a granola bar. I might know a contractor who accepts granola. Really, maybe, if I get to play piano in here too? Deal." Juliet shook her head, but the smile stayed. As they descended the stairs, Eliza skipped ahead. "She's incredible," Nathaniel said softly. "She's everything I never knew I had room to hold." Juliet replied. That night, as Nathaniel stepped outside into the cooling dusk, Juliet followed him to the porch. "One condition," she said. "Anything. If this becomes something us co-parenting, whatever it ends up being, you don't get to walk away if it gets hard." "I won't. Not even if I die." He looked at her, throat tight. "I'll stay. Juliet. For her. For you. For the music." She nodded once. "Then we begin." The attic smelled faintly of old wood and forgotten boxes. Dust floated in the amber light pouring through the skylight. It had rained earlier that day, and now the window above glowed soft and golden, the sun breaking free as if it, too, had been waiting all afternoon to exhale. Eliza sat cross-legged on the warm floorboards, surrounded by markers, stickers, and an empty cereal box she was trying to repurpose into a sign, "The Music Loft." Nathaniel watched her quietly, seated on an old crate across from her. A cup of peppermint tea sat beside him, still steaming. Juliet was resting downstairs, her energy spent from the morning's treatment. Sasha had taken the grocery list and promised to return with soup and fresh bread. The house was hushed except for the occasional creak in the pipes and the distant hum of the refrigerator. Eliza looked up suddenly. "What's the first song you ever wrote?" Nathaniel tilted his head. "I was 12. I wrote it after my dog died." "What was it called?" He paused. "I didn't title it. It didn't feel finished." Eliza gave him a look that didn't belong to someone her age. "Everything's finished, just not always the way we want." That stopped him. She was right, of course, in her own way, and it hit him harder than it should have. "What about you?" he asked. "First song." She looked down, shy suddenly. "It was called Empty Chair. Tell me about it." "I wrote it when Mom started losing her hair. I'd come home from school and her chair at the piano would be empty. She stopped playing for a while. I thought maybe if I played something sad, the chair wouldn't feel so lonely." Nathaniel let that sink in. Music wasn't just her language. It was her armor, her offering, her mirror. He reached over and opened a leather notebook he'd brought. Inside were blank staff lines, pencil sketches of melodies. One page in particular he pushed gently across to her. "This is something new. It's not finished either. I thought maybe we could work on it together." Eliza took it carefully, fingers tracing the notes. Her eyes moved with slow focus, like she was memorizing each bar. "This part," she pointed near the bridge, "should go higher. The melody wants to fly, but it's afraid." "Afraid of what?" "That no one's listening." Nathaniel nodded. "Then maybe we add a harmony beneath, like a voice saying, 'I hear you.'" She smiled, and it was bright and full. "You're good at this," she said. "I had a good teacher once." Eliza stood and moved toward the keyboard they'd carried up earlier that morning. It sat near the wall, plugged into a single extension cord snaking down the stairwell. She turned it on and began to play the notes from the page, slow and thoughtful. Then she added the higher bridge she'd mentioned. It was delicate, not dramatic, but it lifted the melody like sunlight through mist. Nathaniel joined her, sitting beside her on the small bench. His fingers followed hers. It was imperfect, a little shaky, but something in the sound made the room feel like it was breathing again. "You remember how to play?" Eliza whispered, as if afraid to jinx it. "I never really forgot. I just stopped letting myself try." "Why?" "Because I thought I didn't deserve it anymore." She frowned. "Music doesn't care about that. If you're honest, it shows up." He closed his eyes briefly. She was his daughter. There was no doubt now, not just by blood, but by soul. They played until the light changed, until the room shifted from gold to blue. Downstairs, Juliet stirred. Sasha returned and began unpacking the groceries. The smell of warm bread filled the house. As they finished the last few notes, Eliza leaned against his arm. "I want you to stay for dinner." "I'd like that." She hesitated. "Do you think one day I could come visit you? At your place?" He looked at her, soft but steady. "Only if you want to." "I do. Just not yet. I want to make more songs with you here first. Then we'll make as many as you like." That night at dinner, Nathaniel sat at the kitchen table beside Eliza while she told Sasha every detail of the attic jam session. Juliet listened, smiling faintly, occasionally nodding, her eyes more alive than they had been in days. Nathaniel helped wash dishes. He dried each plate with care, taking comfort in the ordinariness of it. Before he left, Juliet followed him to the door. "She trusts you," Juliet said. "I'll earn that every day." Juliet studied him. "Do you regret it? Missing these years?" "Yes." He didn't flinch. "More than anything I've ever done." Juliet looked down. "Then keep showing up. That's how you rewrite the song." He touched her hand gently. "I'm not here for rewrites. I'm here for the next verse." She looked up, startled. Then, slowly, she nodded. Back in his penthouse later that night, Nathaniel sat in silence. He didn't pour a drink. He didn't check his phone. He simply opened the leather notebook and scribbled a single line across the top of the latest page. Attic Duet Eliza's bridge below it. He wrote 4 simple bars. Then he smiled. He had never felt richer. It happened on a Wednesday, a day like any other. Or so it seemed. Nathaniel had spent the morning reviewing proposals at his office in downtown Halcyon. But his mind wasn't on revenue forecasts or global partnerships. It was on the attic, on unfinished melodies, on a girl who had started calling him Nate with increasing comfort. It was on Juliet's tired smiles and the way her hand brushed his arm without apology when she passed him the sugar at breakfast. At noon, he stepped away from a board meeting and texted Juliet, "Thinking of you. Want me to bring lunch?" No response, not unusual. Sometimes she napped after treatment. He waited an hour, then another. Finally, he called, straight to voicemail. A flicker of unease rose. He called Sasha. No answer. His chest tightened. By the time he reached the house, his pulse was steady, but his thoughts were not. Eliza's school was only 2 blocks away. Maybe she was there. Maybe Juliet had gone with Sasha to a doctor's appointment. The door was unlocked. He stepped inside. The smell hit him first. Burnt toast. Faint, but real. And then silence. A kind of silence that didn't belong in a house with a child and a piano. Juliet. His voice echoed, no reply. He moved through the rooms with growing urgency. When he reached the hallway near the bathroom, he saw it. A spilled mug. Peppermint tea soaking into the rug. Juliet. She was on the floor, curled slightly on her side, one hand pressed against her chest. He dropped to his knees beside her. Juliet. Hey, look at me. Her eyes fluttered, unfocused. He checked her breathing, shallow, erratic. He dialed 911. The ambulance came in under 6 minutes. Eliza wasn't home. She'd gone with Sasha on a school trip to the community music center. Thank God. Nathaniel rode in the front of the ambulance, staring straight ahead, jaw clenched, heart hammering. He didn't pray. Not in the way some people did, but he made promises. To whatever might be listening, let her live, let her come back, let her hear Eliza's song when we finish it. At the hospital, doctors worked quickly. She'd suffered cardiac complications, likely triggered by dehydration and medication stress. They stabilized her, but it was close. Too close. By the time Juliet was moved to a recovery room, Nathaniel had aged a decade. He stood outside the glass partition, watching her sleep, her face pale against the sheets, her scarf on the chair. Sasha arrived not long after, with Eliza holding her hand. One look at Nathaniel's face told her everything. Sasha crouched to Eliza's level. Mommy's very tired right now. Okay. But the doctors are helping her. Nate's been with her the whole time. Eliza looked up at Nathaniel. Is she going to die? He said, his voice steady, but something in his eyes betrayed the fear. She's resting. We'll be here when she wakes up. Can I sit with her? Not yet. Soon. Let's draw something for her. So when she wakes up, she sees what you made. They sat in the waiting area. Eliza pulled markers from her backpack and started a picture. This time, it wasn't of the attic. It was a hospital room. 3 stick figures, one in bed, one standing with a tie, one holding a red heart. She handed it to Nathaniel. I want to give this to her when she opens her eyes. You will. The next hours passed slowly. Nurses updated them with cautious optimism. She's responding, resting. They'd continue monitoring her through the night. Sasha eventually took Eliza home. She offered to take Nathaniel too, but he shook his head. I'll stay. The nurses brought him a blanket. He didn't sleep. He sat by the window, looking out over Halcyon, remembering the first time he'd seen Juliet on stage at Juilliard, how her hands moved over the piano like the keys were answering her, not the other way around, how he hadn't been able to look away. He remembered walking past her that day on campus, both of them late to class, brushing shoulders and laughing. The first time she kissed him, the first time she whispered that she loved him, not because of who he might become, but because of who he was when the world stopped watching. And he had left all that behind. Until now. Just after sunrise, Juliet stirred. Her eyes fluttered open slowly. Her hand moved across the sheets, searching. Nathaniel was there before she could speak. Hey, he said softly. You're okay. You're safe. She blinked, groggy. What happened? You collapsed, but you're going to be all right. They caught it in time. Juliet closed her eyes again, then opened them. Where's Eliza with Sasha? She's safe. She drew something for you. He held up the picture. Juliet stared at it, tears filling her eyes. I scared her. You scared me too. She looked at him then. Really looked. I'm tired. Nate. I know. No, I mean, really tired. Of this. Of the fight. You don't have to fight alone anymore." She let that hang between them. After a long moment, she whispered, "Stay, please." He took her hand. "I'm not leaving again, not even if it hurts, especially not then." Juliet closed her eyes, a single tear slipping down her cheek. "I want to hear our song when it's done. You will. Promise me." He leaned forward, pressed her hand to his heart. "I promise." Eliza stood on stage, feet still, hands trembling just slightly above the keys. The recital hall at Halcyon Community Music Center wasn't big, maybe 100 seats. But to a child, it felt enormous, like a concert hall in New York, like Carnegie. The velvet curtain behind her swayed lightly with the draft. A single spotlight warmed the top of her hair. She swallowed. In the front row, Nathaniel sat with Juliet beside him, wrapped in a soft shawl, still pale but alert, her gaze steady on her daughter. Sasha was on Juliet's other side, gently holding her hand. It had taken all of Juliet's strength to come. She had only been released from the hospital 3 days ago, still weak, but she refused to miss this. This wasn't just a recital. This was the first time Eliza would perform a song she helped compose. Their song. The piece was titled Attic Light, a blend of everything they had shared across the last few weeks. It began with notes that felt like sunrise and ended with chords that fell like sleep. Eliza looked at Nathaniel, eyes searching. He nodded. "You've got this." She took a breath, then began. The first few bars rang out soft and clear, her fingers confident despite the butterflies in her stomach. The audience hushed, even the children backstage, waiting their turn, went quiet. There was something about the way Eliza played, not showy, not loud, but pure, like every note mattered more than the last. When she reached the middle section, the bridge she'd written, she paused for a beat. Just half a second longer than the sheet music indicated. Nathaniel felt it. Juliet did too. It was the moment where the music asked the question, "Is anyone listening?" Then she brought in the harmony. It wasn't in the original plan. It was something she'd added the night before, sitting beside Juliet's bed, her keyboard on her lap, a whisper of a second melody, faint but faithful. Nathaniel's eyes burned. He had written that first melody, alone, years ago, and now here it was, completed by a child he never knew existed, a child who had taught him more about love in 1 month than the business world had taught him in 2 decades. When the piece ended, silence hung in the air like mist, then applause. It started softly, then swelled. Juliet wiped at her eyes. Sasha squeezed her hand. Nathaniel stood to clap. Eliza bowed. It was a quick, awkward thing, but the pride on her face lit the room more than the stage lights ever could. She scanned the crowd until her eyes landed on Juliet, then Nathaniel, and she smiled, full and unguarded. After the recital, families mingled in the foyer with lemonade and plastic cups of ginger ale. Children buzzed around in performance dresses and clip-on bow ties, riding the high of applause. Eliza clung to her composition notebook, being congratulated by 3 separate teachers. She introduced Juliet as her mom, and Nathaniel as the other person who helped my music breathe. No one asked who he really was. That was something Eliza still held close. Juliet sat on a bench in the hallway while Nathaniel brought her tea from the vending machine. When he returned, she was staring down the corridor at the trophy case, old plaques, student photos, faded programs from decades past. "She was amazing," he said, offering the paper cup. "She gets it from you." Juliet gave a tired laugh. "No. She passed me. I used to play to be noticed. She plays because she can't not." He sat beside her. She started calling me Nate. That's how she shows trust. Is it too soon for her to know who I am? Juliet looked at him. That's your conversation to have. But if you do, be ready for the weight of it. Not just the moment. Everything that comes after. He nodded. I want to earn it. I want to be there when she writes her next song. When she loses her first tooth. When she forgets to do her homework and panics 5 minutes before school. I want all of it. Juliet looked at him again. Slower this time. Then tell her, but do it honestly. That night, back at the house. Eliza curled up on the couch, still in her performance dress, half asleep with a blanket around her. Juliet had already gone to bed, exhausted from the day. Nathaniel sat near the armrest, watching Eliza's eyes drift open just a little. You stayed, she whispered. Always. She looked at him then. Soft? Curious? Can I ask you something weird? Of course. Have you ever not known someone was part of your story, and then realized they always were? Nathaniel's chest ached. Yes. How do you tell them? With truth, with love, and when you're ready, without fear. She reached out, held his hand. You make me feel safe, even when everything else feels big and loud. That's because you're brave enough to be heard. She closed her eyes again. Sing me the first line of our song. He did, quietly, just one bar, enough to lull her into dreams. After she slept, Nathaniel sat with the notebook, flipping to the next blank page. He didn't write music that night. He wrote a letter. Dear Eliza, there's something you don't know about me, and it begins with the day I heard your music in the subway. It was raining again, not the heavy kind that soaks your shoes and sends people running for cover. This was softer, a gentle drizzle that turned windows into watercolor paintings and made the whole street feel like a lullaby. Eliza was home early from school. The teacher had called Juliet mid-morning nothing serious, just a headache and some dizziness. Juliet brought her home, made chamomile tea, and set her up on the couch with a blanket and toast. Nathaniel arrived around 4. Juliet answered the door holding a mug and wearing slippers. She looked tired, but calm. She's all right, she said softly. Just a little off today. He nodded, stepping inside and setting down the umbrella. The house was warm. The smell of lemon balm tea hung in the air. Eliza was curled under a knitted blanket on the couch, one hand tucked beneath her cheek, the other gently resting on her composition notebook. Nathaniel moved slowly, sitting down at the edge of the coffee table. Hey, he said. She opened her eyes and smiled weakly. Hi. He reached for her hand. I brought you something. Her eyes brightened just a little. What is it? It's in your notebook. The back page. She blinked, confused, then slowly opened it. For a second, she said nothing, just stared at the last page. A letter, handwritten, in clean, deliberate script. She looked up at him. Is this from you? Yes. She sat up straighter, the blanket falling to her lap. She read silently, lips moving as her eyes traced the words. Dear Eliza, there's something you don't know about me, and it begins with the day I heard your music in the subway. I didn't know then that you were the missing piece of my story. I didn't know you were the song I had been waiting to hear, but I know now, and I need you to know something too. I am your father, not just in a biological way, but in every sense I hope to earn. I didn't know about you. Not until that day, but since then, I've been learning what it means to stay, to show up, to listen, to love without needing to be perfect. I don't expect you to call me anything you're not ready to. I don't expect forgiveness for the years I missed. But I hope, with all my heart, that we can write the rest of our song together. With love, Nathaniel. The room was silent. Outside, the rain tapped gently on the windows. Eliza closed the notebook slowly. She didn't speak right away. Her fingers clutched the cover tightly, then loosened. Finally, she looked at him, not with anger, not with fear, with something deeper. Why didn't you tell me before? His voice was low. Because I didn't want to rush your heart. I wanted to earn a place in your world before asking to be a part of it. She thought about that, really thought. Then she whispered, "Did Mom know?" "Yes. Since the day you played that first song." "Did you love her?" "Yes, and I still do." A long breath filled her chest. Then she nodded, slowly, almost to herself. Okay. We can keep writing the song." He exhaled. She reached out and placed the notebook in his lap. "But next time, I want to write the first line." It was her way of saying yes. That evening, Juliet lit 2 candles in the kitchen, not for romance, but for warmth. The power flickered twice, and then steadied. She cooked chicken soup while Nathaniel helped Eliza with her math homework. Nothing extraordinary, but everything meaningful. After dinner, the 3 of them sat on the living room floor with an old board game. Sasha stopped by to check in and left with a smile when she saw Juliet laughing. It was late when Nathaniel stood to leave. He picked up his coat, turned toward the door. Then Eliza's voice stopped him. "Wait." He turned. "I want to call you something." He froze. She stood quietly, still in her pajamas, her notebook pressed to her chest. "I don't want to say Dad yet. Not because I don't feel it, just because I want it to be mine when I do." His eyes welled. "But can I call you my person?" He stepped forward, kneeling in front of her. "Yes, you can always call me that." She hugged him tightly, arms around his neck, her head against his shoulder, and he knew. He didn't need the word. He had the bond. Later that night, Juliet sat by the window while Nathaniel lingered at the door. They didn't speak for a while, just looked out at the rain, watching it paint the world clean. "She chose you," Juliet said softly. He nodded. "I'm still choosing her. And me." He looked at her. "All the time." Juliet leaned her head against the wall. "So what now? Now we rest. We breathe. We show up. We let the music come when it's ready." She smiled. "That sounds right." He stepped outside. The rain had stopped, but his heart hadn't. 6 weeks after the letter, Eliza sat between Juliet and Nathaniel in the sun-drenched auditorium of the Halcyon City Arts Festival. It was the biggest event the community had hosted since the pandemic. Part showcase, part fundraiser, part homecoming. For a city still trying to remember itself. Eliza's name was on the program, not near the bottom, like last time. This time, she had been invited to close the youth showcase. She was introduced as Eliza Wren, age 9 composer of original work titled The Song at the Center of the World. She had picked the title herself. Nathaniel had asked her why. "Because," she said, "everyone has a center, and this is mine." In the audience, Nathaniel held Juliet's hand. Her latest scans had been stable. Her energy came in waves. Some days were good, some not. But she had made it to today, and that was everything. When Eliza walked onto the stage, she wore a soft white dress and lavender ribbons in her braids. She stood behind the microphone for a moment and took a deep breath. "Hi," she said. "My name is Eliza." This piece is for everyone who's ever felt quiet inside, but full of noise on the outside. It's for my mom and for my person." Nathaniel blinked, a lump catching in his throat. A few people in the audience smiled. Some whispered. They didn't know the whole story, but they could feel that something was being made right. Eliza sat at the grand piano. She placed her hands over the keys and played. The opening bars were light and tentative, like the first touch of morning on a window pane. Then came the middle section, bolder, layered, echoing the conversation of many voices in harmony. And then, near the end, a phrase repeated again and again, like footsteps returning home. Juliet leaned into Nathaniel's shoulder, eyes full. "She's yours," she whispered. "No," he said, "she's ours." When the last note settled into the air, Eliza didn't bow. She simply looked up and smiled. Not at the audience, not even at the judges in the front row, but at them, at her mother and the man who had entered their lives not as a storm, but as a stillness. Applause filled the room, long and warm. Later, back at the house, the three of them sat on the porch with mugs of cocoa. The city stretched behind them, quiet and low beneath the stars. Sasha had taken pictures from the event. The frame sat on the porch table, Eliza at the piano, Juliet smiling faintly, Nathaniel standing just behind them both. They looked like a family because they were. Eliza leaned into Nathaniel's arm. "Can I tell people," now he looked at her, "that I'm your daughter if you want to?" She nodded. "I think I do." He kissed the top of her head. "Then we'll find the right words." Juliet rocked slowly in the porch chair. "I used to wonder what kind of life Eliza would have if I didn't make it." "Don't," Nathaniel said. "No, it's okay. I don't mean it sadly. I used to picture her alone, or with strangers, or worse, forgotten. But now I know, if the time ever comes, she'll be held." "You're not going anywhere," Nathaniel said. "But if I do," Juliet replied, "I want it known she was loved by both of us, fully, fiercely, honestly." Eliza looked at them, sleepy but listening. "We should make a record," she said suddenly, "of the song of all the songs. The attic pieces, the subway tune, the recital one, and the letter. You want to record the letter? Yeah, in your voice." Nathaniel smiled. "That might be a tearjerker." "Good. People should cry sometimes." They sat a little longer, wrapped in silence and cocoa steam. Eventually, Juliet stood. "I need rest. But before I go," she held out a key. It was old, brass, slightly tarnished. "To the attic," she said. "It's yours now." Eliza took it like it was made of gold. The next afternoon, they recorded the album. Not in a fancy studio, just in the attic. Juliet sat on the steps, listening. Sasha came by with extra blankets and snacks. Nathaniel brought up a small microphone and propped it on a lamp. Eliza played each song twice, once for recording, once for memory. Between songs, she interviewed Nathaniel. "What do you wish you knew when you were my age? That I didn't have to earn love to deserve it. What scares you? Losing time. What do you think music is? A door. A door to what to the parts of us we forget are still alive." At the end, she handed him the letter. "Read it now." He did. His voice cracked once, maybe twice, but he finished. Eliza leaned her head on his arm. "That's the song at the center of the world. Not the music, the truth." Weeks passed. The attic became a studio. Juliet's strength returned in pulses. Sometimes she danced in the kitchen. Sometimes she needed 3 naps a day. Nathaniel took over groceries, laundry, and Eliza's school run. He stayed. The business world barely noticed his absence. Maya handled operations with grace. Shareholders trusted him more now, not less. Somehow, his quiet honesty had rippled into the company. A new corporate grant was launched, Echo Notes, for young composers who had never touched a piano before. Eliza's story inspired others. But in the end, the story was simple. A girl played a song in a subway. A man stopped to listen, and everything that had been lost began to be found. Sometimes, the most powerful revelations don't happen in boardrooms. They happen in subways, in hospital rooms, in attics lit by kindness. Nathaniel Cross didn't just find a daughter. He found a second chance at fatherhood, forgiveness, and a life worth hearing again. Eliza Wren was never just a girl with a piano. She was a song waiting to be heard, and Juliet, her mother, was a melody of survival, soft, steady, and strong. This story isn't just about a millionaire rediscovering his humanity. It's about the quiet injustice of absence, the subtle damage of unspoken truths, and the beauty that rises when we listen, really listen to one another. Let this be a reminder that no child should grow up believing they are invisible, that music and love both deserve to be felt, not just measured. If this story moved you, if you felt the tears behind Eliza's quiet bravery, or the weight behind Juliet's strength, or the transformation in Nathaniel's silence, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Because every view, every voice helps us continue telling stories that matter. And who knows, the next melody might just be yours.